Before we get into the Season 3 recap, if you need a Season 2 recap, just hit the tab in the upper right-hand corner. Or if you need a recap of the whole series up until this point, there's another tab coming shortly. Just wait for that one. Season 3 kicks off 3 months after the end of Season 2. But even though 3 months has passed, Leanne is still on edge. She tries to go about her normal daily routine, but Aunt Josephine is living rent-free in her head. There's also another issue. There's a lot of bugs that have gotten into her room. She goes over to the windowsill where there's at least 3, and she picks one up. Looks like a cicada. I'm not a bug guy. I don't know. But she clasps it in her hand, tries to revitalize it, but it doesn't work. She then gets dressed and goes to tend to Jericho, and Jericho is downstairs with Dorothy, Julian, and Sean. And those 3 are really excited because Jericho is going to try some of Sean's cooking for the first time. But all Leanne can focus on is the fact that a door is open. As both Sean and Dorothy start snapping photos of baby Jericho, Leanne goes over and slams the door. They reassure that nothing's wrong and nothing's out there, but she tells them, you wouldn't know what to look for anyway. Dorothy once again tries to reassure her by saying, if these people were after you, they already would have come. And you told us yourself that Aunt Josephine isn't coming back. But Leanne tells her that these people are patient and they'll worm their way into their lives and they won't even know it. Dorothy gets her mind off of things because the family is planning a trip down the shore. And this trip will be the first time that Leanne steps foot out of the Turner residence for a prolonged period of time in a while. This trip to the shore isn't the first time that the Turners have tried to get Leanne out of the house. In fact, they've been doing it just about every single day. Sean, Jericho, and her have been going on walks to the park, or at least walks to halfway down the block until finally Leanne just turns around and goes home. Sean, however, can't do today's walk. He's got errands to run, so he asks Julian to do it. And Julian is fresh out of rehab. He's ditched Natalie and has a new girlfriend named Vera who's planning on going to the trip down the shore. And he seems like he's in a good headspace, but that doesn't mean he wants to babysit Leanne. He tries to change the subject by telling Sean that he's gotten him and Dorothy a really expensive gift, but Sean gets it back on track by once again telling him, I need you to fill in for me and walk her to the park. And while those 2 are discussing the exciting trip to the park, Leanne is upstairs taking care of those dead bugs. But it turns out these 3 on the windowsill aren't the first 3. They're just one of many, because she takes that bug, puts it under a glass, and escorts it over to the medicine cabinet. And when she opens that up, there's a bunch of dead bugs in there, but they're all different kinds of bugs. She puts the bug away and gets ready to go on this walk with Julian, but she's still pretty terrified. She finds the strength, though, to start making her way down the street. The whole time, though, her head is on a swivel for attackers. As they're making their way to the park, Julian has something to talk to her about because it turns out these 2 have continued to have sex the entire time. Even with Julian having a new girlfriend, they continue to have sex. But Julian wants to break it off. He wants to try to do things differently. He wants to try to do things the right way. Leanne, however, does not want that because she knows that deep down that's not Julian. And she doesn't want him to be a fake. She also doesn't want to stop having sex with him because Julian's thrust game is a 10 out of 10. So while Julian tries to break it off, Leanne emphatically says no. She then notices that there's a guy standing in the street just staring at a car. She storms up to him, turns him around, but realizes that she's made a grave mistake. The guy's just a street artist. Julian pays the guy off, and Leanne hurries home with Jericho. They didn't make it to the park. Right before Julian steps foot back in the house, a piece of the facade falls off and almost smashes him in the head. Leanne then heads in and gets settled and heads down to the basement. Julian waits for that expensive gift to show up, which is a Peloton. When Sean gets home, though, he's not exactly thrilled to see it. Julian then fills Sean in on the fact that they didn't make it to the park and says that Leanne is downstairs. And the basement is still a big issue. That hole is still there, a swampy mess. It's gotten so bad that Sean had to contact the city to send out a guy to fix it. Now that night, right before Leanne is getting ready for bed, she stares at the painting that's in her room. And the painting is of a guy that's whipping a donkey, and it looks like an angel is trying to stop him. She stares at this painting for a while. But there is a hole right above the painting in the wall, and that is where these bugs are coming out of. And that happens to be the wall that directly behind it is the charred body of Aunt Josephine. She then goes to bed that night with a dagger in her hand. And you get the feeling that she does this every night. The next morning, everybody gets ready to go to the shore. Julian comes over with his new girlfriend, Vera, but Leanne just isn't ready to make that commitment. So reluctantly, Dorothy ends up leaving Leanne at the house, and the family heads off to the shore with Jericho. As soon as they're gone, Leanne arms the house and starts doing some chores. That includes getting rid of all those dead bugs. After that, she heads down to the basement where she gets a FaceTime from Sean. And immediately she thinks that something's wrong with Jericho, but he says, "No, I just called to check on you." Sean then notices that Leanne is back in the basement. And he also knows that she's been on edge for the last 3 months. So he gives her a wine recommendation that's in there and says it goes great with tomato soup. Leanne cracks open a bottle and starts drinking it. And with her journal in her lap, she can't find anything to write about. And this has been a problem. She's had writer's block. The weird thing is, she's trying to find inspiration right in front of the mud pit that's in the basement. That's not working, though. That is, until the mud pit starts bubbling up. And Leanne is looking at it horrified as she just starts scribbling V's. But they look more like when a child is asked to draw birds. When she snaps out of it, she grabs the wine and rushes upstairs. And then she gets into another glass of wine. And another. She ends up calling Toby, drunk, looking for a booty call. But Toby can't come over. He's helping a friend move. Right after she hangs up with Toby, she gets a FaceTime from Dorothy, and Dorothy just wants her to see Jericho at the beach. After showing her Jericho, Dorothy informs her that Julian was attacked by a bunch of seagulls. And when Dorothy relays this story, Leanne actually sits up in bed. She's mortified. As soon as she hangs up with Dorothy, she goes to grab her diary, which was left in the hallway. And when she picks it up, she sees what she drew, and it looks like a flock of seagulls. She then hears something over her shoulder, and it's somebody who's actually in the house. And since everybody that's supposed to be in the house is currently down the shore, she gets super freaked out. So she runs so far away, or at least to the closest closet. She FaceTimes Sean and lets him know that someone's in the house, and Sean says, "Well, hide and call the cops." And Sean then hangs up on Leanne and calls the cops himself. But Leanne doesn't. She starts tiptoeing through the house until she steps on a creaky floorboard and alerts the burglar that somebody else is in the house. It forces her to actually hide into the wall, the same wall that she hid Aunt Josephine, and she sees her charred body. But as she's hiding, she looks closer and notices that that charred body is covered in bugs, and those bugs start flying at her. It forces her to leave the wall. She realizes she can't evade this guy forever, so she ends up luring him into a closet and trapping him there. She starts demanding to know who sent him, who's in charge. But before he can even answer, she starts telling him how they weren't just reborn to be followers. They have their own path. At this point, the police have arrived, and as soon as the burglar hears the police knock on the door, he ends up bursting through the closet door, knocking Leanne to the side and escaping. A few hours later, the Turners arrive home to see Leanne still talking to the police, and the police let the Turners know that this is just a burglar that's been going around the city and waiting for people to leave on vacation so he could break in. Unfortunately for Leanne, the burglar had no idea that she was there. As the police are talking to the Turners, Leanne is upstairs looking to see if the burglar took anything, and she starts looking for the dagger, and it looks like it's gone. After the police leave, Dorothy knows she has to go talk to Leanne to calm her down. She lets her know that they're going to get security cameras, and this person was nothing more than a run-of-the-mill burglar. But it doesn't really make Leanne feel much better. Thank you so much for checking out this recap. Please consider subscribing to the channel. Hit thumbs up if you liked it. Smash that thumbs down button if you thought this sucked. Make sure to be nice in the comment section. If you don't see the next video up in the end screen there, I'll get it up in a few days, not to worry. And I have merchandise, so go buy a mug or something. It's never too early to think about Christmas gifts, folks. Once again, thank you for checking out this recap.